it was for this French publishing house. I'm trying to remember their name. Gallimard. I think I did that for Gallimard. And I think it was an illustration in a big encyclopedia or something like that. It would have been in a big sort of illustrated book, you know.
What's the story behind it?
Ah, well, you see, I just don't remember. I know I was living in Paris, so maybe they commissioned it, because I did a lot of editorial stuff while I was in France. But I just cannot, for the life of me, remember actually doing this. And also, I wonder if it turned into, or a different version of it, became that painting with the, you know, the blue one with the big domes and things.
Floating cities.
Yeah, the floating cities. I suspect they were parallel pictures. I think that must be what it is.
Because it's funny, often you see sort of certain styles.
Yeah.
And your style changes quite a lot, doesn't it?
It does. Well, I hope it does. It'd be rather nice. Yes, I mean, it'd be a shame if it was always the same. Yeah, you see, I mean, just to talk, I read already, I'm thinking, you know, I only have to draw a shape and it reminds me of something. So I suppose there is this great big repository of meaningful shapes in my head or something. Yeah. Very strange. There, put the glove in now. Now, you see, I still don't know what I'm going to do, because he wants something that shows how the rocks got there, and I cannot for the life of me, so I think I'm going to do something like this. Who would have thought all these years later I'd be doing things like this? Because see, in 1 month's time, or a bit less, I will be 66. And probably when I painted this, I would have been about 26. So isn't that interesting? And I think I'm a better artist now than I was when I was 26. In fact, I'm sure of it.
How long would it have taken you to do something like this?
I think this would have taken quite a long time. It's got the look of it. If you look at those rocks and all the planning and everything, I think it would have taken quite a long time.
How long do you think?
At least a couple of weeks, I think, probably.
So would that be working on it continuously for a couple of weeks?
Well,
or a few
only
different...
as much as I did do continuous. You know, I just don't know.
Because did you normally have about sort of a few paintings on the go?
Oh, very much so. Probably half a dozen paintings on the go at any one time. And when I had the studio up in London, some I would leave down here and others I would be doing up in London.
Why was that?
Oh, same as I do now. It's nice to just go away from something, you know, especially when you're stuck, and then come back to it later. It's great fun coming back to one of the houses and digging out stuff you were working on. There, you see, I've just worked out what it is. It's actually lifting it up. There. So that's what's going on.
It was funny going past Southampton on the way down here and seeing all the cranes.
Yes, now they are huge influences. You can imagine that. In fact, I just bought a book on the QE2, and that of course goes to Southampton. Yes, you can imagine, because remember, as a kid, I would spend hours watching the cranes in Guernsey, you know, doing all the tomatoes and things.
What were they doing?
Loading all the tomatoes, box by box. It was very labour intensive. These guys would be right under the crane and holding the ropes and things. Yeah, it was absolutely fascinating.
And so going back to the paintings, when you had a few on the go, and you would sort of, so when you got the initial brief from, say, Steve Abbis, see, which publisher was Steve with?
That he was Grafton, he was Granada, which became Grafton.
And So how long would he give you to turn a job around normally? Would it be a month?
Yes, that sounds about right. And
Yeah.
of course I'd be running late, so when there were 3 days to go, in an absolute tiz, I would start the picture.
So you would end up painting it in about 3 days?
Absolutely, and I can still remember, I mean, this room's always very tidy because I did a lot of them down here, and I used to drive up to London with them, you know, hammering up the motorway, looking at my clock. And I once said to Steve, I almost killed myself getting this job to you. What would you do if the police phoned up from the motorway and said, there's been a big crash and we found your painting in one of these cars, what do you want us to do? And he'd say, Chris, I'd say, if there's no blood on it, bring it in.
So you would get backed up because you had so many on?
Yes, and also I'd go out and play with the railway and things like this.
Right.
You know, like today, it was so sunny, I just had, I know you're only down for a few hours, but I just had to use that little bit of sun. You know,
Yeah.
it was, it would have been such a lost opportunity otherwise.
So you used to paint at night, didn't you? That was your...
Lot. Yeah, because in the daytime I'd be outside. You see, I can still remember, it wasn't that long ago, I was mixing concrete outside in February on a day like this.
building the railway.
Building the railway, building the famous railway, which you've got to get back to, you know. Got to get that done.
Maybe we should have a little film clip of you with the railway.
Yes. Well, I should get the engines going. That would be fun, and then I could rattle up the garden on it, couldn't I?
Yeah.
That would be fun. That would animate the site, wouldn't it? What do you think? Especially if we advertise for volunteers. He's getting a bit old and needs someone to do the digging.
So when you suddenly had the deadline with looming,
Yes.
you would then end up painting sort of, you'd still keep playing right to the last.
Oh, completely. I'd be outside at 9 o'clock.
At night?
At night, thinking, well, if I'm in by 10, I'll work till 2 and get up again, and probably the next day it had to be delivered. And I'd be at that wretched drawing board there, and that's why all the paints are always very well laid out and everything. And even doing those 2 little sketches, I got annoyed because, of course, airbrushes will block up. If you're in a rush, as sure as night follows day, the airbrush will block up, you know.
What was the make of airbrush you like using?
Oh, I used all sorts. The ones I used to use were made by a French company. I used to go and see them, called Fisher, and they were actually in France, near the Champs-Élysées. But of course they went years ago. Well, look, I think this is done, my love. Do you see?
Can you tell me what it is?
Well, look, there's a great big rocky landscape, so it's obviously quarries or something, and they're recovering these huge stones from there. So these are probably bits of debris left over from the mining. They just left it all in space. Are you with me? And that would be like a derelict mine building. These were probably shafts. So that would have been part of a much bigger planet, and to get at the really good stone, they simply blew them away. Are you with me? They broke off. In fact, what we could do is we'll put in the distance a big rocky sort of planety thing just floating in space like this, you know, with these things on it. How's that? There. And another one there.